My name is JD, and I'm an addict. I was highly addicted to cocaine and methamphetamine. It all started when I was about 13 years old. I grew up in an abusive home with an alcoholic father and a mother who suffered from untreated mental illness. My family did not discuss mental health and substance use. Self-medicating with alcohol was a common theme. Whenever I was sad or depressed, I was just told to deal with it. I was brought up with the mentality that mental health was for the weak, and I needed to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get over whatever was bothering me. I experienced copious amounts of hallucinations, depression, mania, and anxiety for decades because I experimented with a lot of different substances to help me deal with it. I didn't recognize the self-medicating pattern I had fallen into, as I had watched my father self-medicate using alcohol my whole life. I thought it was just common practice. This is how you dealt with life, conflict, disappointment, excitement, and celebrated birthdays, holidays, etc. Things came to a head in 2014 when I suffered the loss of my little brother to a farming accident. I couldn't handle the loss and refused to deal with the overwhelming and crippling grief that I experienced. I began self-medicating more and more. I justified this by telling myself that I needed it to work 12 and 16-hour shifts 6 to 7 days a week at a correctional facility. I began suffering mental burnout, and my mania was off the charts. The coworker that I was purchasing my cocaine from began cutting it with methamphetamine so slowly that I didn't notice until it was too late. I went from choosing to do drugs to a full-blown addiction unbeknownst to me. I lost my home. I began living in hotels and out of my car. I began having trouble with law enforcement, and I got involved with an inmate who just so happened to be a drug dealer. I ended up in a physically and emotionally abusive relationship with this person for 6 years. The relationship only put me deeper and deeper into my addiction and depression. I became suspicious of everyone and everything. One night, I went to pick up a friend of my boyfriend's so that we could get high, and he was on the run from the police. It was in the early hours of the morning, and a police officer attempted to pull me over. The friend in the back seat then pointed a gun at my head and threatened to kill me if I didn't keep driving. I went on a high-speed chase and thankfully got away. I was scared to death, as I'd never been so close to dying before in my life. I was more afraid of the guy in the back seat than I was the entire police force that was trying to stop me. At this point, I finally came to realize that I truly had a problem, but it was months before I began seeking help. I turned to my family for help and was met with tough love. I was told to never contact them again until I had been clean for a year and had gotten rid of my boyfriend. I was completely lost. I was in an abusive relationship that I was too afraid to leave. I was wholly addicted to methamphetamine, and I had lost custody of my only child due to my addiction and began going in and out of psychiatric hospitals for my hallucinations. For anyone dealing with an addict, turning your back on them and forcing them into a decision that they are not ready for does not help and is not a good answer when a person is lost in addiction. On Mother's Day of 2021, I decided I couldn't handle it anymore and that I was going to kill myself that night. I called my mother and my sister, and I said goodbye in my own way, and I reassured them that I was fine and that everything was okay. Then I contacted my son's custodial parent, and I tried to force this person to let me see my child. This ended up in a fistfight, and I didn't get to say goodbye to my son. I couldn't handle the rejection. As the night came to an end, I pulled the trigger. I heard the click, and I waited for the bright lights to come. Thanks to a misfire and the grace of God, I am still here today. This was my rock bottom. I woke up the next day and began crying hysterically because I hadn't ended it the night before. I couldn't take it anymore, and I decided it was time to get some help. I called every rehab in New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and Nevada, looking for a 1-year inpatient facility that would take me. Luckily, my higher power intervened. There just so happened to be a program in Las Cruces that was willing to have me. I just had to wait 2 weeks for a bed to be open. I was broke, homeless, carless, and had no idea how I was going to make it another 2 weeks. Out of complete desperation, I called my drug dealer and I begged him for help. He agreed to help me, and we agreed to never see or talk to each other again. I waited out the 2 weeks and made it into rehab at Zia Recovery Center in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I began going to counseling 5 times a day for the first 30 days and then began attending AA and NA meetings twice a day. After the first 30 days, I was moved into a transition home where I spent the next 60 days going to individual counseling, group sessions, and continued going to AA and NA meetings every day. Eventually, I left the rehab and began my personal recovery. I began fixing the relationships with my family. I consistently attend AA meetings, and I found a counseling service and enlisted in personal counseling. I found a psychologist and began a medication regime to control the mental disorders that I was diagnosed with. I still have my good and bad days, but every day is exponentially better than the best day in my addiction. I still don't get to see my son, but I have mended the relationships with the rest of my family, and I really enjoy those relationships more than I ever could have imagined. To maintain my sobriety, I stay away from the people, places, and things that I used to be around when I was actively using to get high or buy drugs. I keep a strong support system around me, and I utilize coping skills for moments when the thought crosses my mind to get high. There are still temptations and days when I feel like numbing my feelings and emotions with drugs or alcohol, but I don't. I either go to an AA or NA meeting, I talk to my sponsor, a counselor, or a trusted friend that knows about my sobriety. I've changed my mindset, and I've become more grateful for the things that I do have as opposed to the things I do not. I meditate in the mornings, and I maintain conscious contact with my higher power. I find ways to be grateful for the feelings that I'm experiencing. There are rough days, and those rough days I focus on everything that I have gotten back. I've gotten back my career, my sober friends, my family, my house, my car, and my life. The person that I am today is much better than the person I've ever been. All around, my life is exponentially better than anything I could have imagined before. My recovery date is May 25th, 2021. Today, I work as an outreach coordinator for United Way of Eastern New Mexico, and I work towards assisting those with mental, behavioral, and substance use disorders.